Welcome to this episode of the Talent Forge, where we are shaping the future of training and development. Today, I am joined by special guest John Larsen. Welcome to the show, John.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. So, we connected during the Disrupt HR Ann Arbor series of that. So, if you're unfamiliar with Disrupt HR, go check it out, look it up online. If you're in the talent development space, you must be living under a rock if you're not aware of it, because it's a pretty cool event. 20 slides, 5 minutes, 20 seconds, or 15, however that maps out, 15 seconds per slide. And it is rapid fire. John absolutely crushed it. And immediately I was super interested in learning more about what he's working on. So, John, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them a little bit about what you're working on and how you got into the talent development space.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I am super excited to be on here. Jay was speaking at Disrupt HR with me, and I was blown away at what he did as well. I was presenting on Stop the Surveys. He's essentially saying that if we want to understand how employees are doing and facilitate better communication with their managers, we need to stop doing surveys and actually foster a real human connection. So that was the point of my presentation there, and
And
really.
that is disruptive. So, we're going to get into that deep, John, but please continue.
Yep, that's what it's all about. So the essence of what I'm doing right now, my company is called Vellum, Vellum, and we are really trying to equip leaders to engage their teams in more effective ways. And we started in the healthcare space with some highly, I don't want to say dysfunctional, but highly challenged teams. And we've been branching out from there, just trying to help people learn to connect more authentically in the workplace and teach leaders also how to respond to emergent needs within their team.
That's incredible. So I've gotten to experience the Vellum software. I absolutely love it. I love the concept. But I'll tell you, when I was there and I saw your title slide come up and it was like, stop the surveys. And I'm like, oh, this is going to go over real well at an HR, inspired conference, because I'm thinking about it, right? And in any organization I've ever been, it's like, oh, we'll do a survey, we'll do a pulse survey to find out how people are feeling. We'll do a pulse survey to, get our engagement scores. We'll do a pulse survey to get our net promoter scores and whether people would even, advocate for us, et cetera. And surveys have been the tool of choice in being able to mass produce some kind of data or some kind of analytics for us to, and I'm going to say for us to review or for no one to review, because I have been in organizations where they had
Yes.
stockpiles of data from surveys. And I'm like, who looks at these? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, who's analyzing this data?
Yep.
So I'm not calling you out if that's your organization. Don't worry, it's human. It happens to the best of us. But so, John, let's talk about that. Why stop the survey? What is wrong with the survey instrument as a tool for us to learn more about our organizations?
Well, I will tell you, Jay, that I'm actually a big believer in getting data, but like I have nothing against using data to see what's going on in an organization and understand it better. But I think that there is a fundamental flaw in the way we and the reasons why we get that data today that has to be addressed. That is that usually we do surveys because communication is poor and we don't know what's actually going on. So it's well intentioned. Yes, we want to learn what's going on. But the second reason that we do them is because there's a lack of trust between the parties that we're trying to get information about. So we think, well, if I'm a manager and I go ask my employee, how am I doing as a manager? They don't really trust me. So they're not going to tell me,
Great,
well,
John. You're doing
yeah,
awesome.
they'll tell me I'm doing a great job. Exactly. So it's that lack of trust that's really at the heart of the issue. And if instead we could build an environment where we can be authentic with each other. I mean, you think about the people that you're closest to, you can be real with them. If there's something wrong, you can talk it through because you have a real relationship founded on trust. So that's what we're aspiring to do, is to transform that relationship between teammates and with their management to be able to have real conversations and then be able to do something about the issues that they see.
So I'm gonna ask a question that I want to address in just a minute, but I don't want to forget what the question is. But what if I am afraid of having that difficult conversation? What if I don't know how to have a conversation that, from something that I learned in an authentic space? So I want to address that, but I want to stick here on this survey question because I think it's so important. And quite frankly, I don't hear a lot of people telling us to do less surveys. Now, I really, really, really appreciate what you said about, hey, this survey is replacing some of our ability to connect. Anytime that I've done like corporate organizational training or management training, it's been to get leaders to have more one-on-ones, even if they're short, even if they're not work focused, whatever it is. But the reality is, they don't have time in a lot of cases, or at least that's the barrier. That's one of the perceived barriers. I try to show them how they can have more time for that. But in reality, a lot of times I see somebody deploying a survey and saying, well, we don't have time for interviews. We don't have time for this. We don't have time for X, Y, and Z. And I really like what you said is you don't have trust for interviews, is what I heard you say. You don't have
Yes.
trust. Can you go a little deeper into that? Because I really think that that's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, I mean, the other point that you're getting into, Jay, is the essence of many of these is the aggregation. It's okay, we don't have time. We want to do all this stuff and see everything, so we're going to aggregate it up. But the reality is, people are not affected in aggregate nearly as much as they are one-on-one.
Hmm.
And so it's that one-on-one relationship that we need to be able to build. Now, you've also hit the nail on the head with the challenge of that, and that is everybody's busy. And so when we attacked this problem, we said we have to find a way to do this more efficiently without it feeling like it's just efficiency gains, right? We're
Hmm.
trying to accelerate that time to trust. You're trying to accelerate and make it easy to see what's going on. Now, ironically, when we do it with surveys, it almost works against itself. Nobody wants to do a survey, so we do them less frequently. You do them less frequently, you get less information out of them, and it doesn't really tell you as much. So we've tried to make it so easy and so authentic that it doesn't feel like a survey. It's actually just checking in, how are you doing today? And trying to get at your real emotions and feelings besides just work. It isn't some professional, are you satisfied with your job today? Oh, good, I have to check this box. Who knows who's going to look at it? It should feel like your boss actually comes to you and says, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? If we can get to that and make it easy for them to do that, then we can start to build those trusted relationships.
What you said so important too is when we have trust, everything else actually goes faster. We did a study at one point in time where we added into a meeting. So our meetings are too long, they're not good, they're not this, they're not that. And what we did was we added a 10-minute line item on the agenda, which they freaked out about at first. They're like, you're adding 10 minutes to our meeting. How are you going to shorten the meetings? I was like, this is my prediction from a behavioral science standpoint. Add this into your meeting and we're going to test your meetings over the next 60 days and we're going to see. So they had 2 meetings per week. It was Wednesday and a Friday. They added this 10-minute check-in to each of those meetings. And sure enough, by the time that we hit the 60-day mark, their meetings had reduced in time by more than 14 minutes above
Yeah.
what the 10 minutes added was. That's 24 minutes less meeting time by adding this 10-minute check-in. It was
Yes.
incredible. They could not believe it, but this is that anomaly of when we have trust, communication is faster, people air issues faster, they talk about mistakes faster, they talk and celebrate wins faster, they feel more empowered to speak up, we get more information, and it's a powerful, powerful mechanism. So that's part of the reason why I absolutely fell in love with what you're doing and what your message was. I'm going to admit, when I received surveys, so back when I was in my Wayne State University days, and they'd send out a survey, and they sent it out maybe once a quarter or anything else like that. Immediately, there was three things that I thought to myself, and I'm talking 20 years ago, let alone the technology that we have now. Who's monitoring this, and can they tell who I am by
Yep.
my yeah, by my whatever it is. I'm not a tech person, but could they tell who it was by the computer that I did? Since I have to sign into all your systems, I'm immediately not trusting that. And I'm like, you ain't getting from me.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was number one. Number two was my immediate thought was, who's reading this? Who is this going to? And how are they using it to make decisions? If I put something in here, is it actually going to be evaluated? And my immediate thought process was that probably not. So why would I spend my time and energies, putting in answers? So they finally had made it multiple choice. And then I'm thinking to myself, like when they created this multiple choice option, I'm like, none of the above, virtually every single time. So every piece they were getting misinformation from this
Yes.
process.
Yeah.
And to hear you talk about this, and this is 20 years later, and honestly, one of the first people that I hear talking about this in a humanistic way is so refreshing that I had to have this conversation.
Yeah. Jay, it's funny because you talk about that anonymous thing, and that is such a foundation stone for surveys right now. It's like if we want it to be real, it has to be anonymous. And we've felt like that's actually completely the opposite. Like if you want it to be real, then make it real. Like actually put in there who you are. With our approach right now, I would say we even go one step beyond that. Like when people respond and do a check-in within our technology, not only is it not anonymous, but it's they get to choose, and usually they don't just share it with their manager, they share it with their whole team. So they'll do a check-in and say, hey, I'm feeling anxious today because X, Y, or Z. And they share it with the whole team. So in many ways, it starts to feel, I feel like we're almost delivering on the promise of social media with avoiding
Mm.
some downfall, right? Like social media was supposed to connect us more, but because it's 1,000 people you don't actually know, then it doesn't really build connection. But for us, you're sharing this with the people you do know, the people you're working with today. And so it builds that connection because it's not anonymous. So it really takes that and flips it on its head.
So we're here and we're discussing surveys, which I guarantee if you're a trainer, if you're a coach, if you're an HR person, you've probably used them, and that's not something to feel shame about. But let's talk a little bit about your platform and what it does, because like I said, I've had the opportunity to log in, see what the back end of the system is, and we're even piloting this and trying it out with our team because I was just like, wow, this is something that could be a game changer for me as a CEO, not a trainer, to be able to keep a better handle and continue to build relationships with my team. So give us a quick rundown. What does it look like? There's an app, there's obviously a dashboard that you can access in a PC, but give our audience just a little, glimpse or insight into what would they see and how does this function?
Yeah, let me break this into two pieces, actually, Jay. The first one, I want to share an experience to kind of bring to life what we're doing. And then I want to talk about where we went on from there. The first part of this experience was before we even built our technology, we wanted to see, will people be real with each other if we give them an easy tool to do that? And so we did a pilot with the big poster board of a feelings wheel. We went
Mm,
into a hospital, these couple of units that we were going to work with. We had this feelings wheel. We asked the nurses when they came in for their shift huddle to put a post-it note on where they were feeling that day. And this
neat.
one of the units we went to, we knew that they were having some struggles there. Even as we were getting ready, one of the nurses comes walking through, grumbling under her breath. This is such a waste of time. Why do we have to be here? Everyone's always late. And you could just feel the negative energy coming off of her. And I was sitting there going, oh, great. I'm about to ask her how she's feeling today, right? This is going to be fun. So everyone gathers. I ask them to put up their post-its and say, hey, does anybody want to share where you put your post-it and why? That nurse raises her hand.
Of
I'm
course.
sure all of your trainers are like, yep, we've been there
Yep.
before, right? So I'm like, okay, do you want to share? She says, I put my post-it on anxious. I've been feeling extreme anxiety ever since my cancer diagnosis a year ago. I don't know what to do about it. I feel it at home. I bring it with me to work. I've tried to get help. I think I need real help because I can't seem to manage it right now.
Let
Now,
me guess, John. No
yeah,
one in there, or most of the people in there, had no idea
there were
about.
people that had worked with her for 3 years that did not know that she
Ugh.
had cancer. So it's like we're all right in front of each other and we have no idea what's actually going on in our lives, you know? So people might be sitting there, like the chief nursing officer said before she shared that, I was getting ready to pull her aside, tell her she needed an attitude adjustment, right? And then
Hmm.
she's like, what are we doing? Like, I gotta help this lady.
Shifted
So
that mindset immediately, didn't it?
yeah, 180 degrees. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Now, as we achieved that, very quickly, all of the managers said, this is amazing. Like, I actually know what's going on with my team now, but actually, I don't know how to respond. Like, she said, one of them, another, I'll try and be fast with these experiences, but one of them said, I had my steady Eddie on night shift. He just does everything, no questions asked ever. A week after we started using Vellum, he put in that he was grieving. He was feeling grief. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, I just had a loved one pass away. And she's like, I would have had no idea without Vellum. But now he tells me he's grieving. I don't know how to respond to that. So what we
Back to my
did,
question there. Yeah, okay,
yes,
good.
exactly. So what we did is we said, let's take, there's trusted content that tells people how to respond in emotional situations like this. Let's take that content and let's put it into an AI coaching engine. So they don't have to go out and read an article, but it's going to say, hey, you have a teammate that's grieving from this. Here are 3 sentences that might help you know what to say to them. And
Oh,
so it
that's
takes that
brilliant.
content and summarizes it, teaches the leader right there in the moment, hey, just express your concern, offer this, just some basic principles, but directly applied when they need it in
That
that
is
context specific.
brilliant. So it's interesting when I was doing work with, I'm going to say, a very large automotive manufacturer, we ended up having to curate, because this was a little while ago, but we ended up having to curate handwritten or, resources from the web or here, there, wherever else to be able to help. And it was, you could search them by the title and then came up this article, but you've actually developed an AI coaching that grabs these trusted resources and then provides some context to ask.
Yeah, so it essentially summarizes the resources using the context. So it says, okay, it's this type of employee, this type of manager, this is the resources you want to use, responding to this. So it'll actually be like a direct response. Some people even say, hey, can I just like copy and paste that? And we're like, you're missing the point here. Point
Right.
is human connection. Don't copy and paste. Go talk to them. You can use these sentences, but go talk to them in real life.
John, where were you 3 years ago? So, yeah, no, I love this. So, and one of the other things, just kind of like down a rabbit hole, of course, because I'm really good at that, but in the idea that you took that emotion wheel into the space, you essentially use design thinking principles to see, is this going to be a viable solution? And you got your answer. You got like immediate results. And it's such a powerful, powerful story because
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of managers out there who really do give a shit. They care. They
Mhm.
want to be that support level, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know how to ask. And it's daunting because I can't just go up and go, John, do you have anything personal in your life that you'd like to share with the rest of the? So
Yeah.
like creating that space within the Vellum platform. And that's why you have the emotion wheel in the Vellum platform. So that way people can actually visually find something, see where it fits with them, be able to comment on it, choose to share it, choose not to share it. So they still control and have autonomy and agency. But that makes so much sense. I love that story and that example because, wow, like
Yeah.
how would it have impacted that very upset, very anxious person had the boss gone down the road of going, you need an attitude adjustment. You're not fitting within the culture. You're doing this. And then, I mean, we've all seen what a
Yeah.
reaction to that can be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
powerful.
The other thing I'd say, Jay, that you're touching on here is there is so much, it is so hard to achieve behavior change,
Yes.
right? To really get people to act in different ways, it's never simple. Like as we've implemented Vellum, we have these aha moments, but it's still such an uphill battle to say, well, how do we really weave this into their culture and the way they work and the way they talk? Like even the way we roll it out. we thought, well, this is easy. Just give them the app. They all use it. And then we learned, no, any employee at a hospital is going to just throw away, like they don't want to install any new app. So that's going to be gone right away. But if the manager really goes to them and says, you know what? I want this to be a team where we can talk to each other and where we're real with what we're feeling. And I'm going to be more real with you. I want you to be more real with me. I've got 50 people that report to me, which is normal at a hospital, which is stunning, but I've got 50
Stunning.
people. Yes, stunning. So the only way I know to do that is with this app I found. So I'm going to do a check-in each day, and I hope you'll do a check-in too and share, and we can all see as a team how we're doing. So we're trying to really help them, even in the way they roll it out. It's not about the app, it's about us as people, right? So achieving that behavior change is definitely an uphill battle.
Yeah, I just had a commercial flash through my head, John, of I'm a behavioral scientist. My name's Jay Johnson, and I endorse this message. Behavioral change is hard, and
Yes.
that's the things. And it feels like it shouldn't be, but the reality is, and this is one thing I've learned, and this is one of the reasons that I do like your approach. If you make it easy, people will do it. If it's too hard, if it's too cumbersome, if it's too complex, that the motivation, drive, and the sort of resilience of shifting a behavior or changing a behavior. If it's hard, people aren't going to do it. If there's too much friction, they won't.
Yeah.
So creating the conditions for somebody to be successful right out of the gate, to be able to have impact out of the gate, to engage in something and see the results right away is such a powerful motivator for those types of behavioral change.
Yeah.
Now, as you've put this into play, I'm sure that there's been a lot of resistance because of exactly that. Oh, another app of this, or I have to do this, or whatever else like that. Fast forward those same people a week later, and if they've actually engaged in it, what's the reaction? What's the response once they sort of get into this and see, huh, okay. What's the thought on that?
Yeah, it's so exciting to see when they actually adopt it and when they start to have those realizations. Like as a team, we can see what's going on with each other. I did one rollout with a hospice provider, and it was fun because I had rolled it out with the management team first, so they could check in with each other before they roll it out to the rest of their team. And, I got up and kind of started to introduce it. And then the manager, the leader who was implementing it, stood up and said, "Can I just say something? I love this." And she just started to
Hmm.
talk about when she had had this experience that really was a transformation moment for her. And then one of her managers raised her hand and said, "Actually, can I share too? Like, this is what happened to me." And so when they share those things, it's no longer, hey, this is some outsider that's coming to try and get us to do something. It's, hey, I'm real. I really want to connect with you and I'm excited about this. So very different response.
That's I kind of figured that that was going to be the case. And here's the really interesting thing that we have found in some of our different research. A simple check-in and a follow-up from a manager on issues such as these can reduce burnout by nearly 30 or 40% inside of an organization. If the person feels valued, feels seen, feels heard, and is allowed to essentially communicate what they're actually going through or those experiences, it has a tremendous impact on culture. And the biggest barriers that I ever see, and by the way, so audience, I have no affiliation. I make zero money off of Vellum. I really, really was like, wow, this is something that is long overdue and a really powerful platform. And part of the reason I loved it was because I have worked with managers for the past 20 years. And like I said, more often than not, they care, but they don't know how to show it sometimes. They're put between this place of, I have to be the manager. And I also, now you're telling me I should be sort of friends or colloquial. Where's the line? How do we draw this? How do we allow somebody to be authentic? How do we not show favoritism? How do we ensure? How do I not open myself up to an HR violation? How do I stop myself from getting
Yeah.
into a conversation I have no idea how to handle? And this literally helps overcome every single one of those barriers, every single one of them.
Yeah.
Nope, we're going to provide you with resources to respond. Nope, we're going to create a safe space that the person gets to choose whether or not they engage or whether or not they want to share. This gives a safe space for you to be able to have a conversation in the event that somebody needs a conversation. So I can't speak highly enough about that, John. Tell me more and tell our audience more. I'm cautious on time here, but as we start to look at sort of like an organizational implementation, right? You've got the individual that maybe came in, didn't like it at first, starts to love it. What about from an organizational standpoint? What's the response been from those individuals that are either getting empowered with how to have these conversations? How has leadership looked at some of the impact that this tool is creating?
Yeah, I would tell you that we have seen a difference across organizations that there's almost a threshold. Like we had one organization that the trust was so low that nobody was willing to get in and start doing it. So
Yeah.
you do have to have a certain level of relationship and trust within your organization to get them start doing it. Then if they're at that level, then it can increase wherever they're at. And we actually saw some that were super high already and they still
Oh,
improved, and
yeah.
some that were very low but improved dramatically. And so it's as long as you're at least a good enough threshold that there is some level of trust, then you'll be able to implement it and get it going. Jay, one thing I wanted to point out, obviously I'm thrilled about Vellum and that's why I'm here. Like I want to get that out there. But I also want to zoom out a little bit because it may not, some of your listeners might not be looking to use something like Vellum.
Sure.
But I think there's a couple of things that we're doing that I hope they'll take away anyway. Number one is real human, like being human, being authentic, and building connection. Whatever you're doing in your work, I think if you start to do that, you'll feel better about yourself, you'll have a better impact in the world, and everyone will be better off. So that's one thing that I take as very fundamental to what we're trying to do. The other thing that is more specific, but may have broader application with your user base, is with regards to learning and teaching and education. What we're trying to do is say, get it to them in the most relevant way when they need it, the most bite size that you can do. And really saying, okay, how do we do that? How do we get in front of the people when they need it in the way that they do need it? And I think that technology is starting to bring all sorts of opportunities to do that. Now, how that's all going to play out, I have no idea. But
Right.
if we look for that as some of those guiding principles that we want to apply, I think we'll all be well served, both the teachers and the learners. So those are things that I hope will apply across the board to your user base.
You beat me to the punch, my friend, because I was going to say, all right, let's get into core philosophy. Say we don't have the technology, say we don't have things like that. And I think that you hit the nail right on the head. One of the things, one of my favorite authors, Daniel Coyle, talks a lot about culture, the culture code, et cetera. And that personal connection is the fastest way to shift your culture. It is literally, if you want a different culture, it has to start with that sort of connection and trust building. And to your point, I thought it was so brilliantly stated. If there's no trust on a team, it doesn't matter what the bells, whistles, gadgets, it doesn't matter what you try to do. Everything's going to start in a place of, I don't trust it. I don't believe it. I'm not going to put anything in there because it's going to be used against me. And here's where I would say that I think some leaders end up failing to fix that type of a culture is that they look at it and immediately they say, I don't understand. That's ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that Jocko Willink talks about is when he gets a criticism or when he gets that kind of feedback, he takes two steps back, reviews it, and says, what's true about this? And what am I here to learn? Because if somebody has that perception, that means other people have that perception. But
Yes.
that's a tough pill to swallow as a leader of like, did I create a culture of non-trust? What are the policies? What are the procedures? Is it one of my managers? So digging into some of that space. But I think that your point's well taken. When you have a high performance team, adding in this type of opportunity will only exponentially increase that high performance culture. When you have a low performance culture, adding something in, do it with caution, because while it can help, you really need to do the work before you start adding in something like this. I think that's a
Yes.
great takeaway as well.
Yeah.
So, John, how would the audience get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more about you or about Vellum or about surveys for that matter?
Yeah, I would love to talk with anyone. You can first of all go to our website. It's vellum.team. So vellum.team. That's where you can get more information and you can reach out to me directly at john@vellum.team. So love to chat with anybody, even if it's not directly about Vellum, but just some of the principles that we're applying. I'd be happy to connect and share more.
This has been such an insightful conversation, John. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here. I think that our audience will most certainly appreciate a different perspective on, the old dreaded survey instrument and how we really can forge a new pathway on that. So thank you for taking the time to be here with me.
So appreciate it, Jay. It was great to talk with you. Thanks.
And thank you, audience, for tuning into this episode of the Talent Forge, where we are shaping the future of talent development.